Great. Hi, my name's Karina. I'm from the Iris, and we're here talking with Dichen Lachman about the amazing new Netflix series Altered Carbon, which we gave it a smashing 4 stars out of 5, which I'm very proud about.
What happened to the 1 star?
No 1 stars review here. It's definitely loved it.
The 1 star that got left out.
Oh, the 1 star that got left out.
No, I'm just joking.
I've actually seen the series 3 times already because I loved it that
Amazing.
much. So we're going to talk to you about Altered Carbon. And it has been likened to Blade Runner, and obviously Philip Morgan has sort of said that that was one of his influences. But thematically it touches on a lot more, so things like existentialism, immortality, religion, faith. So I guess, was there something in the script specifically for you that drew you to the project?
I mean, you just said it. There is so much. Mm-hmm. There's like a wealth of information on this show that they deliver in an entertaining way, and issues, themes. I responded to the strong female characters on the show. The women in this story are really driving it forward. And I also responded to, some of the things you just mentioned, the social issues. Is income inequality, access to technology, healthcare, just our relationship to technology in general. I think the show is a warning. I hope that, amongst being entertained and enjoying this visual feast, it's so beautifully shot and beautifully done. It's really like a 10-hour-long theatrical experience. I hope people take a moment to pause and think about our relationship to technology today, because it's exponential, and there are people working on some of the ideas on the show as we speak. They just recently cloned monkeys, and our DNA is very close to theirs, and I'm not sure if we're ready to handle everything that's coming towards us. A lot of futurists talk about how one of the greatest threats to humanity is mass unemployment, because so many jobs are being replaced by computers and robots. And how is our society going to handle that? The economic system, it's going to become a weight that people won't be able to bear. So there are a lot of lessons in this show and questions and things we really need to look at.
Yep. And as you mentioned that the women in this series in particular, personally for me, I thought they were just badass. Like all of the women in this are badass in different ways, of course.
Yeah.
So obviously a lot of physical training for your character went into the character of Raylene Kawahara. So, was there something in particular for you to see, like from a, actor perspective, that you sort of had to focus on in order to try and really get into that character?
Yeah, there was a lot, because there's Ray when you see her in the past, and then there's Ray when she's 250, 60 years old, potentially older. And so, her physicality for me, I wanted to have a difference there. Because as you live and you get older, you start moving in your body differently, I think. And on top of that, there was also the physical training for all the action sequences, which was intense. The level of detail that went into choreographing the fight scenes on this show was, for me, I'd never experienced anything like it. It was like what I imagine a huge feature. The resources that the stunt team had to make sure that we felt comfortable and we had all the training we needed was just remarkable. And they would pre-vis all the fights, shoot them with music and edit them and put special effects in so that we knew exactly what we were walking into. So there was more physical preparation for me in this role than I'd really ever experienced. And I know Marta and Joel have talked about that as well as Renee, lots and lots of training.
Yeah. And of course, a lot of the, the physical training that you did, and there's one episode in particular, and I know you've been asked this question before on multiple occasions, but I've got to jump in there and ask about that super amazing fight sequence that you do, where you're completely naked and you're going up against Marta's character. And I guess for me, what I wanted to know is, for you, did it feel really empowering to do a scene where it's not based on sexuality, it's completely about aggression and power, and her trying to actually, the character of Raylene trying to show her level of power?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, initially you are nervous. I mean, I've never been naked in front of that many people in my life, but you're absolutely right. I leaned into the character, and with the incredible support of the producers and the crew and all the people that work so hard to make those 3 days happen, it was really empowering. It felt strong. And, I felt by the end of it really blessed and lucky that I'd had the opportunity to do something that epic. It's also important because that's the only scene Raylene has with another character, really. I mean, every scene, it's just with Kovac. And maybe there may be other people in the room, but she's really only communicating with him for the entire show. She's a recluse, she goes out into the world in different bodies. She's always hiding.
So it's really only when she's with her brother that she feels completely comfortable to show herself.
Yes, and with Ortega, she's just having fun. It really helps show the audience how fierce Raylene is. And the nudity in the show, I think, in general, is just there to underline this world where these, that line for the show, your body is not who you are. The Kelcrest Falconer says that, in one of her speeches. It isn't who you are. So it becomes just like a piece
tool.
of clothing, a tool. And so that's my answer to why I felt comfortable doing it, because I think it served the story and it really drove the story forward. And it also was pivotal for Raylene to see her in that self-conscious, unapologetic place of strength and power.
As a character, she never comes across as, feeling like she's concerned about things. She always just seems very driven and very headstrong.
Just to expand on that, you're absolutely right. Every woman on this show has such a clear intention. She's not just there as dressing, no matter how small the role. All the women in this show are survivors, and they're all going, directly into the direction that they want. Miriam, Kel, Ortega, Raylene, even some of the smaller side characters, their intention is clear. They're all survivors.
And sort of touching back on sort of the aggression and the violence and the nudity, personally for me, I actually never felt that any of it was gratuitous. It always felt like it served a purpose, or it had its moment in relation to the character. So, it just never felt like there were moments where it was like, oh, they're just kind of doing that just for the sake of getting to show off Joel Kinnaman's abs, It's like, oh no, it's actually because he's getting into this, sexual relationship with a character or something like that. So personally, I felt that it was
neurochem, muscle memory, all that stuff. It's about it's really highlighting to the audience how far the technology has gone. That you could wake someone up and give them a few shots of this and that, and all of a sudden they're like a super soldier, which isn't that far away from actually happening.
No,
and
and
people are working on it.
There's conspiracy theories floating around that the US government have already been sort of tapping into that sort of stuff. So
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, exactly. So you got to play against basically two different versions of the lead character, Takeshi Kovacs. So Joel Kinnaman and also William Lee. So I guess, how did you get into the mindset of performing against two different actors who are playing the same character?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. When I initially read the material, I was curious, if I have to approach it differently. And then I think what really grounded me in the answer to that at the end of the day was not to think about it. They were just the same person, and there's that scene in episode 7 where she says, "Welcome back, you're gonna die. I can't save this sleeve." right? And so that nonchalance just also really makes it clear that this is just a shell, and she knows her brother to be the spirit and the soul, and it's irrespective of what body he's inhabiting.
Yeah. So, you know, for you, you were just kind of looking at the actors and just going, oh, but somewhere in there is the actual character of Takeshi. So, yeah. And speaking of different castings, so one of the things that I also really loved about the series is the diversity of the casting. So we're not just looking at Caucasian people here. There's, you know, there's people of all different races and all different, you know, sort of genders as well. So do you think that something like that is, you know, the reason why this show has succeeded so well on Netflix as well is because they're, as a service provider and a streaming service provider, that, you know, they're slightly less beholden to having to deal with, you know, the whims of, you know, the man and the studios and stuff like that. So obviously they can look at, you know, creating a better casting environment.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I think Netflix are dancing to the beat of their own drum, and they're doing really well. You know, I mean, I think it makes sense, you know, if you're a global company, to have a show or to have shows where people can look and see a reflection of themselves, you know, and Altered Carbon is such a incredibly diverse cast of people, just in terms of how we look and culturally. And I think that it's done a remarkable job of, you know, letting those people take the center of the screen, or to be integral to pushing and driving the story forward, that you don't often see in film. Film is not very diverse, generally speaking, and they do make more of an effort in television, but it's there's a lot of tokenism that goes on in network television. And so, you know, we're speaking in general terms, of course, but in Altered Carbon, it's just this incredible world where you imagine that in the future there are people of and I mean in the now. I mean, look at, you just said you're part Thai, part Italian, right? I mean, what an incredible mix. This is happening now, but it's not always represented. And Lita, you know, she's an incredible human being, and one of her missions in life is to give people like me or Will or Renee like a moment to drive the story forward, and you know, she's done an incredible job in and the writers in terms of this show in doing that.
And just wrapping up, so this is a bit of a slightly obvious question, but I guess if you had the opportunity to get re-sleeved, is there, I guess, a type of person, character, look, you know, is there maybe a celebrity that you'd like to get re-sleeved into for the day?
I mean, I think because of all the topics sort of circulating in society today, I think it'd be incredibly interesting to be re-sleeved into a man, and then for a man to be re-sleeved into a woman, maybe for a month, a whole month, just so that we can learn to understand each other. Because men and women, you know, I definitely believe, of course, in equality, that everything should be equal. But I think that we are different. Our bodies are capable of different things physically, obviously. And I find that I think the way to get to a better point of understanding is to celebrate why we're different, right? And that we should be complementing each other, no matter where we fall in terms of our sexuality and how we identify, and then come together, you know, because yes, everything should be equal, but we should also appreciate the wonderful things that are different about us.
Great. So yeah, thanks for your time today, Dichen.
Thank you for watching the show and loving it.
And yeah, so anybody, if you're out there and you haven't checked out Altered Carbon on Netflix yet, it's available right now on Netflix. Just check it out.
I highly recommend it.